Alright, we're here today working on the Mighty Mule 350 gate opener. What happened is, it's kind of a common problem, is water got into the case and destroyed the rev counter board, or it's causing a malfunction. It's kind of an interesting malfunction because what it's doing is when the gate opens, and ours is set up in a push to open configuration, the ram is actually going past the set stop. It's pushing the gate open too far and jamming the motor, and then causing a internal fuse to blow because it can't go any further. Normally there's a limit switch that senses when the gate is in the closed position, and then there's a counter that counts how far it goes out, and there's obviously something wrong with that counter, which normally trips a error code and makes the gate stop. I had this happen once before, and the problem before was we had the opener tilted upwards, so water was running, when it rained real hard, water was running down and inside. Now we actually have it facing this way, just a hair to keep water from doing that. I think some water was getting in back here around the wiring, and I since sealed it up, but it's too late, and I think it's damaged the board again. So I purchased a new rev counter board, which could be picked up on Amazon for about $22, and it's good to have one on hand. I had this one ready to go, because if you're like me and you rely on the gate every day, you have to be ready to fix it at a moment's notice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take it apart, change that board. There's not a whole lot. There's a main circuit board inside, and there's another board that's the rev counter, which is what I'm talking about. So like I said, in our case, I've already kind of started here, but this was, you can see how much further the hole here is past this hole, and the problem that we had was, like I said, it opened too far. So I had to use a hammer to hammer the pin out, and then we'll take the pin back here out, which I've already pulled the lock off. I have one of the locking pins like this. And then to work on it, we will flip it over. And I'll go ahead and stick the pin back in, just temporarily to hold it there. Put this here. That way we have a surface to go ahead and work on this. So obviously the first step is going to be to take out the 3 Phillips head screws to get the cover off. Once we start into this, first of all, make sure your power switch is off. But once we start into this, you'll see that there's actually a lot of screws to kind of keep tabs on. So I would suggest having something to put them in. A little bit of silicone causing this to stick here, but okay, I'll get that off. Okay, now if you look inside here, you can see that it's cold out here, so there's ice. So obviously there's water still in here. And I have a feeling, even though I just had this cover off and was trying to clean it out, that there's water trapped inside of here. And on this piece here, there are actually drain holes here and here, but they only work if the front of the ram is up higher than the back, which is not the way it's supposed to be. Mighty Mule recommends that it's completely level, and I've found that if it's completely level, water can still get in there. So what I'll probably have to do is to modify this just a little bit and put another drain hole up towards the front here. As you can see, that's where it's obviously collecting. I'll drill a little hole right here to let the water drain out. Alright, so depending on whether you're using solar or a transformer to charge your batteries, there's a few things you need to do. You need to either unplug your transformer, your 18-volt transformer, wherever it's plugged in, because we are going to be removing the board completely, which you have to do to get in here. And you also need to disconnect the battery. So in our case here, this is your battery connection. And then we're going to go ahead. You don't have to unscrew all the wiring, but in my case, I'm going to disconnect some of the wires because we need to get these screws out to take the board out. And the fuse is not blown. It blew last time, so that could be good or bad.
Alright, here I am in the battery box. It wasn't the fuse actually on the motor itself. This time I have a separate fuse line down here on the battery, so it actually blew. And that's just because the motor, when it jammed, it pulled so much current. That's why we have fuses, to keep things from catching on fire. So before we get it all back, we'll have to replace that. So for now, I'm just going to leave that disconnected. So what I'm going to do to make it easier, I'm going to just remove these two wires here, which go down to the motor. And it's really all you have to take off. You do not necessarily have to remove all these wires. You can if you want to make it easier. And then you need to take out this screw here. And this screw here, and then the board will lift off, and we'll just set it over here out of the way while we work on the rest of the unit. Alright, now once you get the board lifted up, there's a couple more things we need to remove. We're going to remove this little pin here, and then these two wires here. Make sure you take a photograph of this before you disconnect it, so you remember which one was positive and which one was negative. It doesn't necessarily say. And then don't confuse it with the wires you took off on the top either. Okay? So we'll pull all this off, that way we can get the board swung out of the way here. Alright, so once we've got the board lifted out of the way, it will reveal all of the screws, and these are like a Torx bit screw. It needs to come out, and you need to take all of these out. And like I said, keep them somewhere safe, you're not going to lose them. Also down here, this unscrews. So before you can take them out, you need to unscrew this, which... yeah, here we go. Otherwise it won't be able to separate. You can see there's water right in there. You can see all the sludge and the water that's trapped in there. Alright. There's supposed to be some kind of scraper in here that doesn't really last a real long time, that keeps the water from coming in, but that can wear out, which is why I said it's important to have it so it's at a slight angle down, so water runs down this way away from the insides. And as advised, these are two different size screws here. So the shorter ones go in the front and the longer ones are in the back. Way down in here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it with this or not. Alright, well, as you can see, the bottom is now separated, and look at all the water that was in there. Turn it over here so you can see what's going on. Don't let everything fall out. But here is where we're at. So here's our motor. And it actually doesn't look too bad in here, but you can see all the ice that's accumulated in here. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this out, get it cleaned up. I think when I reassemble it, I'm going to put some silicone in these tracks just to make sure this is watertight as it should be. There's a little seal that goes around here, and I don't know if water's getting in there, but anyway, this is your rev counter board here. This is your limit switch for when the gate is closed, or if you have a pull to close gate when it's open. And this wheel spins in this eye here, and that's how it knows how far the gate has turned. Well, what happens is this gets messed up with water, and it can't count properly. So this is the board we're going to be replacing. Alright, I just got everything cleaned out. I'm going to let it air dry for a few minutes just to kind of let all the water evaporate. That's the residue, but depending on how bad yours is, you may have rust in here that you need to clean out. Ours actually isn't too bad, but so to get the board out, it's pretty easy. There's just one little more screw there we need to take out, and we'll set the new board in place. Here's our new board. There's the model number for anybody who needs it. I don't really see any obvious signs of corrosion in this except for down here. You can see on the contacts kind of how it looked last time. But so hopefully we can keep this one protected better. It is covered with like a waterproof coating, but get that on there. Okay, so we got the new one set in place. He said that just needs to be lined up between the wheel. What happens is when this comes all the way down, it just gauges that limit switch so it knows to stop. Plug your wiring back on here. Alright, now we're ready to go. Start putting everything back together again. Alright, so got everything ready to go back together. Like I said, I'm going to put a dab, just a tiny dab of silicone, because I have a feeling there's a little bit of water getting through the case here. Alright, I've got some silicone in there. I've got two pieces fitted back together. So now all I need to do is put the bolts back in and bolt the two sides together. Go ahead and retighten this. Make sure everything's aligned properly. And then we can reconnect our circuit board and plug everything back in. Alright, now I've got all the bolts back in, or the screws. Go ahead and tighten down the end piece here. Make sure when you're relining this back up that you get that little scraper rubber gasket. It's inside here. It goes in the second notch. Get that put in the right spot. Tighten this down. Get it threaded on right. Also, I added a couple more just tiny drain holes. There's already one up here, but I added a couple more just to give water. That way if there does get any water in there, it has somewhere to go to get out. And it's got drain holes built into it throughout, but I think if the moisture is able to just sit in there and condensate, it doesn't do good things to the electronics. All right, there we go. I'll get that on, throw that on there right. All right, nice and tight. And then we'll bring it over. I'll just set it in place here. And that way we can lay the board back in
and get it fastened back into place.
Okay, so remember, plug your wire back in here. Remember which way you had these plugged in on the bottom, which I don't, so I'll review the photo I took, and then get the two plugged in back on the top. Up here it's actually got the plus and minus. Probably does down here too. No, it doesn't. So I'll review the photo I took and put it back on. Alright, we've got power back on. We've got a new fuse in the battery compartment. So you can see it says we're charging. Flip power on. Got that. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to reset everything, the travel on the gate. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll close the gate. We'll start in the closed position. Or actually, we'll have to start kind of in a half open position. I'll show you how we do that here in a second. And with a push to open gate, it zeroes at when it's closed, and then you use your limit switch to set how far you want the gate to open. So I'll show you that right now. Alright, so I've got the arm retracted halfway, and I manually stopped it with this. Why I did that is so I can kind of get it in a position where I can get the pin into the gate here. If I can find the pin. So pin in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the gate go ahead and close, and we'll reset its travel. Okay, so now the gate's closed. We will set how far we want it to open. Alright, so we're starting in a closed position. What we're going to do is you're going to press the button to open the gate. When the gate gets to how far you want it to open, press the button to manually stop it. Then come over here, there's the set limit switch. You'll press that for 5 seconds, and then the gate position will be learned, and you can go ahead and run it through its positions to make sure. So once again, I'm going to open it. As soon as it gets to where I want it, I'm going to stop it with the switch. Okay, so that looks good. So now I'll press and hold the set limit for 5 seconds. You'll see the status light come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now your gate should be programmed. So close it. I'll just stop it right here just to speed it up. Go ahead and open it, and it should stop right where I just programmed it. Alright, so now all I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cover plate back on. We're going to flip the gate opener back around. Obviously, when we're working on it and programming it, it's upside down. We'll flip it back around, and I'm going to go ahead and seal up where the wires go in with some new silicone. And hopefully our problem remains fixed.